Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Mayors Against Illegal Guns conference call with the Vice President. We're excited to see so many of you on the line with us today and excited to welcome the Vice President in a few minutes. To start the call, I'd like to introduce you to John Feinblatt, who is Mayor Bloomberg's Chief Policy Advisor and is one of the founders and leaders of our organization. John.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for joining our call today. I am John Feinblatt, and I'm Mike Bloomberg's Chief Policy Advisor. I'm proud to be on this call with so many leaders and supporters from all around the country. There are literally thousands of you on this call. As many of you know, we are at an important time in this effort to create safe communities for ourselves, for our neighbors, and for our families. Your active participation in the next few weeks will be key to the success of this effort. And I want to give special thanks to many of our partner organizations that are helping to bring national attention to this issue. They include Americans for Responsible Solution, the group recently founded by Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and her husband Mark Kelly, Moms Demand Action, and Organizing for Action. I particularly also want to thank the more than 900 coalition mayors, many of whom are on this call today. Your support, your resolve in finding solutions to the gun violence problem is what has brought us to this point today. And I also want to sincerely thank the families and survivors that have been touched by gun violence. Those of you who are on the call today work tirelessly to help us prevent future tragedies. You are an extraordinarily important voice for this effort. I'm also thrilled to say that we have over 100 events planned for tomorrow as part of National Day to Demand Action. These events are your opportunity to make your voices heard locally and in the halls of Congress. Thanks to those of you that are already hosting or participating in these events, and for those of you who want to get involved, we'll give you more information and more details later in this call, but you can also go to demandaction.org/events. As you know, we're about to be joined by the Vice President, who has been an extraordinary leader and a champion for years in the gun violence prevention effort. He has been leading the effort on behalf of the Obama administration. We are grateful to have his strong, experienced voice in our corner. We could not get to where we are today without the Vice President's leadership, his energy, his efforts, his passion, and his vision on this issue. Before the Vice President comes on, let me just say a few words about our organization. Mayors Against Illegal Guns has been working since 2006 on a simple idea that you can support the Second Amendment and at the same time keep guns out of the hands of criminals and other people who are prohibited from having guns by Congress. And now, without further ado, I want to welcome the Vice President, Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, I know you're on the line with thousands and thousands of supporters who are pushing for reform across the country. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, John, thank you, and thank you for being with us so much. Poor John, although he runs Mayor Bloomberg's Operation Policy Council, he has probably spent more time on the phone with me and my staff or in this office than he ever imagined he would be doing. So, John, thank you, and I've had multiple, I guess my staff and you are on the phone probably 2-3 times a week, and I've had the same opportunity to meet with the mayors as well as with Mayor Bloomberg, who quite frankly is the engine that is generating so much help in this issue. John mentioned that he wanted to thank the victims' families are on the phone and those who have been victimized themselves. When I went down to speak at Virginia Tech with that god-awful tragedy that occurred down there with so many students gunned down in the classroom, There's an incredibly impressive young man who I think received more than multiple bullet wounds. He was in the classroom watching his classmates die. And when I went down, to speak down there, he and speak to with the governor of Virginia and with the police chiefs and the like, and the senator from Virginia. He spoke to us, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "I'm not here because of what happened to me. I'm here because it keeps happening to others." Nothing shocked America's conscience, as all of you on this line know, like the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School. It had a profound impact on the psyche of the American people. The senseless slaughter, and that's what it was, slaughter, of 20 beautiful babies, 6 and 7 years old, children, and 6 brave, and it's not hyperbole, 6 brave teachers and staff who put themselves in harm's way to try to save these children, gunned down senselessly. And look, all their voices are silent now, but we cannot remain silent. We cannot remain silent. And the courage that was demonstrated by those teachers, we don't expect the same amount of courage from our elected officials, but Lord's sake, we do expect them to have the courage to stand up and take responsible action to end this senseless violence. Look, when the president asked me to put together a series of recommendations for him as to how to proceed to deal with gun violence in America, we started off with 4 basic principles. One was that the court had ruled that individuals have a right to own a weapon to protect themselves in their own home. We recognize that. The second one we recognize is there are certain people who, under our Constitution, even, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, even Justice Scalia acknowledged this in the opinion, that are able to be prohibited from owning a gun consistent with the Second Amendment, and there are certain weapons that we are constitutionally able to prohibit being on the street or owned by individuals under the Second Amendment. That was the third principle. And the fourth principle was this isn't only about guns, although it is about guns. It's about the coursing of our culture. It's about school safety, mental health. And with all these things in mind, we met with, I did and my staff met with every possible stakeholder out there, a total of 229 different groups. Governors, mayors, of course, have been leading this fight, county executives, law enforcement, mental health experts, survivors of gun violence, religious groups, sportsmen's groups, the NRA itself, representatives from the movie and video game industry. And we spoke with many of you who are on this call as well. And I've also done a roundtable discussion with enforcement, law enforcement from Richmond to Philadelphia. We stood the brave families of Newtown, Connecticut, in New York, and with the mayor, and in D.C. here. And my team has met week in and week out with the leading gun safety advocates. And we had scores of meetings and conversations with my former colleagues in the Senate. There has not been I would suggest a day has gone by that the Vice President's office hasn't been in contact with a staff and or a principal in the United States Senate or in the Congress, making the case this is absolutely essential that we move. And I've done Google Hangouts, interviews with a range of groups from Parents Magazine to Field and Stream, and I've met with a group of courageous retired generals and admirals, professionals, and professionals in the mental health field, and we're not finished. Look, we have known ever since we passed the original the background checks that the so-called Brady Law in the 90s and 94, as well as the assault weapons ban, magazine limitation, etc. We've known for years. Experts have known for years that one of the most productive things we could do to lessen gun violence in America is have universal background checks. They're the chief priority of gun safety groups, and for very good reasons. 40% of the guns now purchased in America don't require a background check, and they're what matters the most. That's why in '93 we made the Brady Bill, the first major gun safety legislation this country had passed in a quarter century. We set up a background check system that has stopped 2 million felons, fugitives, and domestic abusers from buying guns. And we've done it all within the instant background check system. They literally take minutes to do. No federal registry is kept. It's not gun registration. It's common sense. Common sense. And although we couldn't get it done back in '94, we are determined to make this universal. No one anticipated that there'd be a loophole big enough to drive a Mack truck through, with 40% of the gun sales being able to be sold out there with any background check at all. So I think we're on the verge of getting a serious, thorough, universal background check system in place, and it will. Emphasize, it will save lives. It will save lives. And on terms of gun trafficking, for years, mayors and governors have told us that trafficking is their top priority. As they point out, a substantial percentage of gun crimes committed, in their cities in particular, are committed with weapons purchased outside the state. In Illinois, for example, 47% of the guns recovered were purchased outside the state. In New York, it's 68%. So today, often the only way to prosecute a so-called straw purchaser, that's someone who goes out and can legally, because they're not prohibited from buying a gun or guns, and turning them over to or selling them for a profit to criminal enterprises or criminals, is that the only way we can prosecute a so-called straw purchaser is to prove that they lied on the background check form. Not only is this very hard to do, but it usually comes with a sentence of only about 6 months. A federal gun trafficking statute, which is passed out of the committee, the Judiciary Committee, would change that. It would make it a criminal offense to purchase guns with the intent to transfer them to another person, a federal offense. There would be a common sense exception, such as buying a gift for people allowed to possess guns. But this could be a game changer, and we've known it for a long time. Finally, we have a chance to get it done. With regard to school safety, we've tasked the Department of Education to work with the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services to develop model emergency management plans and best practices. And I'm sure all of you on this phone, not all of you, a significant number of you in this phone have had, if your officials have had a call from your local elementary school or high school or school board saying, Chief, what do I do? Or the school board president, what do we do if, God forbid, we have an incident like what happened at Sandy Hook? And the best practices we're making available for the entire country. We also think that there should be an option available, like there used to be under the so-called Biden crime bill in '94, to put 100,000 cops on the street, and that is to allow people to have school resource officers. That is, the last thing we need is school teachers, and my wife teaches full-time to this day, and she's been teaching for well over 30 years. The last thing we need, and ask any teacher, is to arm teachers. Armed teachers, turn schools into armed camps. But what does make sense is if a school decides they want to do it, have a school resource officer. That is a sworn shield, someone who is a sworn police officer, in or out of uniform, armed or unarmed, depending on what the school wants, in the school to be able to have contact with and build relationships with not only the staff but the students in that school. And we have proposed that there be flexibility there. If they didn't want a school resource officer, they could get the same amount of money if they wanted to have another counselor, if they wanted to have a school psychologist. Let the schools decide to do that. And we also think in the area of school safety, and this has been, we're going to get a chance to vote, and train teachers to recognize the warning signs of mental health, like we train them in first aid. Armed with information, not with guns. A number of you on this call are psychologists. You are you are psychiatric nurses. You are docs. You know, and you've taught us that there are certain warning signs that come along at a very young age. It's like a Roman candle going off. That if trained, you say that child is in jeopardy. That child should get some help. And to be able to direct them to help. We're expanding mental health To make mental health services affordable and available, the Affordable Care Act is already expanding access to mental health care for millions of additional people. And we're working on a new regulation that will ensure that 62 million Americans get the quality mental health care that they're entitled to, the coverage they get. And we're proposing to train. We have a shortage of mental health professionals, and we're proposing to provide funding to train 5,000 mental health professionals that will be available, and we need more. And we're hoping the states will pick this up as well. And lastly, but not least, the assault weapons ban and the limitation on the size of magazines. Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is just the beginning. We believe that weapons of war have no place on our streets. That's the message that the retired admirals and generals have spoken to us about. The comment one of them used was, if you want to learn how to use a semi-automatic weapon, join the United States military. But these are weapons of war. And we believe there's no rational reason why someone would need a clip that can hold 15, 20, 30, 100 bullets, 100 rounds. We have to do more, and we will do more. And the last point I'd like to make to you, and I'm sorry to go on so long, but like all of you, I feel very passionate about this issue. We also are going to be pushing that, and we're going to continue to push, for additional research. The idea that there's been a ban on certain government agencies like the Center for Disease Control or the National Institute of Health and others from being able to tabulate the information on gun deaths in America and try to draw some scientific conclusions from what we should be doing to deal with this is absolutely mindless. The President's put a stop to that. No nation that is as informed as ours should walk away from additional information that can save lives. But there's another piece of this. We think we should be investing money in research, serious research, whether it's at NIH or independently sponsored at universities, to determine what is there anything we can learn from, for example, the impact on the neural pathways of young children the development of their brains in terms of watching repeated examples of gratuitous violence on video games, in the media. We should know. There's no really hard, indisputable data. And we should let the data determine. We should let the facts determine what we do about that. And lastly, I'm working with some of the most brilliant scientists that I've encountered through, there's an Office of Science and Technology here headed up by a brilliant guy named John Holdren, as well as the President's Board is made up of scientists and experts from around the country suggesting the President's how he approached these major new breakthroughs in medicine and health and technology and energy. And one of the things that is being looked at is the ability to be able to cheaply and quickly be able to equip every weapon in America with an ID capacity so that only the purchaser of the weapon would be able to pull the trigger and a bullet would come out the muzzle. And we're a little bit away from that, but that's on the horizon. And we should make that a priority in terms of whether or not we can develop that kind of technology. Imagine what it would be if every weapon purchased could only be fired by the person who purchased it, and everyone who purchased the weapon was entitled to have that weapon. They had passed a background check. It could be a game changer. So although the issues relating to the background check, issues relating to school safety, issues relating to the issue of trafficking and magazines and assault weapons, they'll all get a vote. That doesn't mean this is the end of the process. This is the beginning of the process. The American people are way ahead of their political leaders, and we, President and I, and the mayors intend to stay current with the American people. So I thank you all very, very much. I know you're going to hear more about how to organize tomorrow. It makes a difference. Make your voice heard. Somebody's life will depend on it. Somebody's life will depend on it. Thank you all so very much. And John, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I know the thousands of people on this call are so grateful to you for your leadership on this issue. I'd now like to introduce our Senior Policy Advisor and Counsel, Brina Milikowski, who's going to let you know how you can get involved with our effort moving forward from this day on and make sure that your voice is heard both in your towns and cities as well as in the halls of Capitol Hill. Thank you. Brina?
Thanks, John, and thanks to the Vice President for joining us today. It's a treat to be here. And thanks to all of you for everything you've done so far and the exciting work we can do together in the next few weeks to get to a winning vote in the Senate. The most important thing we can do in the lead up to the vote in Congress in a couple weeks is to make our voices heard, because we know that Congress is paying attention, not just to the polls and to the news, but also to grassroots events and local initiatives showing overwhelming support among Americans for common sense public safety measures. So that's why Mayors Against Illegal Guns has launched our National Day to Demand Action tomorrow. While Congress is at home for their spring recess, we're going to flood their communities with events organizing Americans from all over the country. The last I heard from our amazing field staff, we are up to 142 events in 29 states, with more and more being planned today. So we are truly going to flood the country with what's going to be the largest show of support for gun violence prevention in history. I know that many of you on this call are already planning on hosting or attending events as part of that effort. We can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. Your work is going to make the difference. But if you aren't involved already and want to learn out how to get involved, we've made it as simple as possible. One-stop shopping on our website, www.demandaction.org/events. From there, you can do a few things. Enter your zip code and find all the events right near you. Also on that page, you can enter your phone number and pledge to call Congress tomorrow. We have a neat tool that makes it as easy as possible. If you enter your phone number on the website, we'll send you a confirmation text and then send you a text tomorrow and connect you to your senators to make it as easy as possible to call them and ask for their support to support comprehensive background checks on all gun sales. So again, that's demandaction.org/events. And just as importantly, we need to keep the momentum up after tomorrow. And we're going to be planning lots of other events over the next week and a half, so long as Congress is back home for recess. But one thing you can pledge to do today is to join our call team. So in addition to flooding the phone lines to Congress tomorrow, we'd like to keep up the phone calls going into Congress up until the time of a vote. So if you press 1 right now on this phone call, you can pledge to join our call team and call your senators once a week. We're at this most important phase of this effort to create safe communities for ourselves and our neighbors and our families. Your active participation is what's going to be key to our success, so thank you so much for all that you're doing. We wouldn't be able to do it without you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining the call. We really appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon to be with us, for all you're doing in your communities to support federal and local legislation on this important topic. We look forward to the fight ahead with you by our sides and at our backs, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.